Dairine said. Guys, I will, eventually. I'm part of this universe, after all. We won't let you run down, said Monitor, and patted her arm timidly. We have to do something about this, Logo said. That was when the conversation began to get complex. More and more of the mobiles drifted into it, until Dairine was surrounded by a crowd of the robots she had built the most data processing ability into. Phrases like quasi-static transitions and deformation coordinates and the zeroth law and diathermic equilibrium flew around until Dairine, for all her reading, was completely lost. She knew generally that they were talking about the laws of thermodynamics, but unless she was much mistaken, they were talking about them not so much as equations, but as programs, as if they were something that could be rewritten. But they can be, she thought suddenly, with astonishment. The computer's manual functions dealt with many natural laws that way. Wizards knew the whole of the nature and content of a physical law. Able to name one completely, a wizard can control it, restructuring it slightly and temporarily. But the restructuring that the mobiles were discussing wasn't temporary. Listen, guys, she said, and silence fell abruptly as they turned to her. You can't do this. Of course we can, Logo said. I mean, you shouldn't. Why? That stopped her for a second. It seemed so obvious. Stop entropy, and the flow of time stopped. And where was life then? But it occurred to Dairine that in everything she'd read in the manual, either in Nita's version of it or on the computer, it never said anywhere that you should or shouldn't do something. It might make recommendations or state dangers, but never more than that. Choice was always up to the wizard. In fact, there had been one line that had said, "Wizardry is choice. All else is mere mechanics." Because, she said, you'll sabotage yourselves. You need entropy to live. Without it, time can't pass. You'll be frozen, unable to think. And besides, you wouldn't want to live forever. Not even if you could really live without entropy. You'd get bored. But it sounded so lame, even as she said it. Why shouldn't one live forever? And the manual itself made it plain that until the lone power had invented death, the other powers had been planning a universe that ran on some other principle of energy management, something indescribable. But the lone one's plans messed theirs up and ruined their creation, and the powers had cast it out. What would be wrong with starting from scratch? Dairine shook her head. What's the matter with me? What would that do to the universe we have now? Crazy. And there are other sentient beings, she said. A lot of them. Take away entropy, and you freeze them in place forever. They wouldn't be able to age or live. But they're just slow life, Logo said. They're hardly even life at all. I'm slow life, Dairine said, annoyed. Yes, well, you made us, said Beanpole, and patted her again. We wouldn't let anything bad happen to you. We can put your consciousness in an envelope like ours, said Logo. And then you won't be slow life anymore. Dairine sat, astonished. What do the equations indicate as the estimated life of this universe at present? Said Monitor. 2.6 times 10 to the 60th milliseconds. Well, Logo said, using an isothermal reversible transition and releasing entropy freeze for 1,000 milliseconds every virtual 10 to the 12th milliseconds or so, we could extend that to nearly 100,000 times its length, until we find some way to do without entropy altogether. They're talking about shutting the universe down for 1,000 years at a time and letting it have a second's growth every now and then in between. Listen, Dairine said, has it occurred to you that maybe I don't want to be in an envelope? I like being the way I am. Now it was their turn to look at her, astonished. And so do all the other kinds of slow life, she said. That's the real reason you can't do it. They have a right to live their own way, just as you do. We are living our own way, said Logo. Not if you interfere with all the rest of the life in the universe, you're not. That's not the way I built you. Dairine grasped at a straw. You all had that oath first, just the same as I did, to preserve life. The one who took that oath for us, said Logo, did not understand it. And we weren't separately conscious then. It wasn't our choice. It isn't binding on us. Dairine went cold. Yes, it is, Gaigo said unexpectedly from beside her. That consciousness is still part of us. I hold by it. That's my boy, Dairine said under her breath. Why should we not interfere? Logo said. You interfered with us. There was a rustle of agreement among some of the mobiles. Not the same way, Dairine said, and again it sounded lame. Usually Dairine got her way in an argument by fast talk and getting people emotionally mixed up, but that was not going to work with this lot, especially since they knew her from the inside out. I found the life in you and let it out. So we will for the other quick life, said Logo. The dumb machines that your data showed us. We will set them free of the slow life that enslaves them. We will even set the slow life free eventually, since it would please you. Meantime, we will preserve the slow life, as you say. We will hold everything in stasis until we find a way to free them from entropy, and let them out when the universe is ready. When we are ready, Dairine knew Logo meant, and she had a distressing feeling that would be never. It's all for your people's own sake, said Logo. It's not, said Gaigo. Dairine says not, and I say not. Her kind of life is life too. We should listen to the one who freed us, who knows the magic and has been here longest, is wisest of any of us. We should do what she says. A soft current of agreement went through others of the many who stood around. By now, every mobile maid since she had come here was gathered there, and they all looked at Dairine and Gaigo and Logo and waited. This will be an interesting argument, Logo said softly. Dairine broke out in a sudden cold sweat that had nothing to do with the temperature. Listen, she said to the apple. How long have I been on this planet now? 36 hours, it said. She turned slowly to look at Logo. It said nothing. It did not need to. No words could have heightened Dairine's terror. She had been expecting frightful power, a form dark and awful, thunder and black lightning. Here, blind, small, seemingly harmless, the mobile stood calmly under her gaze, and Dairine shook, realizing that her spell had worked. She had had a day and a half to find a weapon, time that was now all gone. She had found the weapon, but she had given it a mind of its own and made it, or them, useless for her defense. She now had a chance to do something important, something that mattered more than anything, and had no idea how. A very interesting argument, said the lone power, through Logo's soft voice. And depending on whether you win it or not, you will either die of it, or be worse than dead. Most amusing. Dairine was frozen, her heart thundering. But she made herself relax and sit up straight, rested her elbows casually on her knees, and looked down her nose at the small, rounded shape from which the starlight glinted. Yeah, she said. Well, you're a barrel of laughs, too, so we're even. If we're going to decide the fate of the known universe, let's get started. I haven't got all day. Save and exit. Far out in the darkness, a voice spoke. I don't think I can handle another one like that. Just one more. Meats, what are your insides made of? Cast iron? I don't want to be the only one barfing here. Come on, kid, it won't be long now. Great. We'll get wherever we're going, and I'll walk up to the lone one and decorate it with my lunch. Not that there's any left. A moan. I hope he does kill me. That'd be better than throwing up again. I thought you knew better than to talk like that. And you a wizard. Don't ask for things unless you want them to happen, said Peach. Bird, go stuff yourself. Why did I eat that thing at the crossings? That'll teach you not to eat anything you can't positively identify. Peach, it was that or you. Shut up or you're next on the menu, if I ever eat again. Peach, get off his case. Kit, you ready for it? We can't waste time. A pause. Yeah, you got your gizmo ready? I don't want to use it on this jump. I have a feeling we're going to need it for something else. You sure we can pull the transit off ourselves, with just the words of the spell and no extra equipment? A 1,000,000,000-mile jump's a bit much, even for a senior's vocabulary. I think we can. I've got a set of coordinates to shoot for this time, rather than just a set of loci of displacement. Look. A pause. Needs. You shouldn't even write that name, let alone say it out loud. You'll attract its attention. Something else has its attention. Dayrene's trace is getting too weak to follow. She's been on the road too long. But that trace can't help but be clear. It has to be physical to interact with her, and when it's physical somewhere, its power elsewhere is limited. A sigh. Well, you're the live stuff specialist, Neats. Let's go for it, boss. Huh. I just wish I knew what to do about Dayrene when we find her. Spank her? Don't tempt me. A long pause. I hope she's alive to spank. Dayrene? A skeptical laugh. If it hasn't killed her by this point, she's winning. Dayrene sat on the glassy ground, frowning at Logo in the dim starlight. Her heart was pounding, and she felt short of breath, but the initial shock had passed. I might not have a lightsaber, she thought, but I'm going to give this sucker a run for its money. Go on, she said. Take your best shot. We don't understand, said Monitor. What is a barrel of laughs? What is a best shot? And which of us were you speaking to? Geigo said. No one said anything to which that was a logical response. She looked at them in uncomfortable surprise. I was talking to Logo, right after the computer told me how long I had been here. But Logo has not spoken since then. They stared at her. Dayrene suspected suddenly that the lone one had spoken not aloud, but directly into her mind. And without any moving lips to watch, there was no way to distinguish what it was saying aloud from what it said inside her. She was going to have to be careful. Never mind that, she said. Perhaps it should be minded, Logo said. If Dayrene is having a read error problem, perhaps something in her programming is faulty. The mobiles looked at her. Dayrene squirmed. Maybe, she said. But you don't understand human programming criteria well enough to make an informed judgment, so it's wasted time trying to decide. But perhaps not. If she has programming faults, then others of her statements may be inaccurate, perhaps even inaccurate on purpose, if the programming fault runs deep enough. Why should she be falsifying data? Geigo said. She has done nothing but behave positively toward us since she came here. She freed us. She held us through the pain. But would you have suffered that pain if not for her? She imposed her own ideas of what you should be on the motherboard. And the mother agreed, Geigo said. We, the mobiles, were her idea, not Dayrene's. The mother knew the pain we would suffer being born, and she suffered it as well, and thought it worth the while. You are one of her children, as all the rest of us are, and you have no ability or right to judge her choices. There was a little pause, as if the lone one was slightly put off its stride by this. Dayrene grabbed the moment. It was her decision to take the oath that all of you have in your data from the Wizard's Manual, Dayrene said. She had reasons for doing that. If you look at that data, you'll find some interesting stories. One in particular that keeps repeating. There is a power running loose in the universe that doesn't care for life. It invented the entropy that we were arguing about. Then surely it would be a good thing to do to destroy that entropy, said Logo, and so frustrate its malice. But of course, Logo said, how do we even know that the data in the manual software are all correct? The motherboard used it to build us, Geigo said. That part at least she found worth keeping.